Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Bonita Springs, Florida. Yep, you heard that right. I haven't shot a review in a while, and really there's a couple of good reasons for that. But the primary reason why is, well, you're standing in it. This is the new home of Darren Miles Photography in Bonita Springs, Florida. And I have big plans for the studio. Everything from obviously doing my own professional work here, and then in addition to that, I want to be able to conduct some seminars here as well on how to become a professional photographer. And of course, reviewing the latest gear. And well, I think it's appropriate that the first review is for this little piece, or big piece, of amazing right here. This is the latest Pro Series lens from Olympus, the 300mm f4 IS Pro Series lens, and it is a hunk of elegance, refinement, style, and precision all wrapped into one. Now, Olympus is offering this lens at a price point that represents a new high for native Micro Four Thirds lenses. So how good is it really, and is the price point justified? Well, we spent the last 2 weeks putting the 300mm through the paces, and if you want to know how it fared, well, stick around and find out. In the face of increased competition in the mirrorless camera segment, both from Sony and Fuji and their full-frame and APS-C size sensor camera bodies respectively, Olympus has had to work even harder to differentiate themselves in the mirrorless world, and they've managed to do an amazing job of squeezing every last little bit out of their Micro Four Thirds system by introducing top-quality optics and build quality in their lenses. First, with their high-quality and value-priced line of f1.8 and f2 primes, and now with their top-shelf and expanding line of Pro Series lenses. The latest in that Pro Series line comes this, the 300mm f4 IS Pro lens. You heard that right, image stabilization built in, which works in tandem with Olympus's in-body image stabilization to offer up to 6 stops of stabilization on a compatible Olympus body. That's a game changer, and great news if you're a Panasonic shooter out there, as the lens alone can do up to 4 stops of stabilization. Now, at $2,499, is Olympus asking too much for this lens? So first up is the build quality, and true to the others in the Pro Series line, the 300mm is just a thing of grace and beauty. It's such an elegant combination of materials and design. It's made out of metal, and it's heavy. In fact, this is the beefiest lens that I think I've ever tested in the Micro Four Thirds world to date, tipping the scales at 3.25 pounds. That's heavy for any system, but especially for Micro Four Thirds. And this is also the first time in my Micro Four Thirds experience that I've actually felt the need to attach the camera to the lens and not the other way around. The focus ring, like the other Pro Series lenses, is ribbed and tactile, and it rotates really smoothly, but not with the same kind of refinement and resistance as the 40-150 Pro or the 12-40 Pro. Like all the Pro Series lenses in the line, except for the 8mm fisheye, this one has the AF to manual focus clutch mechanism that is precise and extremely well implemented. The focus limiter switch and the IS switch are on a very high order of build quality as well. And these things snap into position without any fuss at all. Now on the inside, there are 17 elements arranged in 10 groups, and it's a sophisticated formula of glass elements that includes 3 Super ED lenses that eliminate peripheral chromatic aberration, along with 3 high refractive index lenses and 1 extra high refractive index lens. Now, this combination of elements produce sharp, aberration-free images. Moreover, Olympus implements something called Z-coding, which according to Olympus reduces instances of ghosting and flares. There's also 9 rounded aperture blades on the inside for some really nice autofocus bokeh rendering. Speaking of the aperture, it ranges from f4 all the way to f22. And lastly, the front filter thread is 77mm. A lens like this, with its 600mm equivalent field of view, is typically used outdoors in the elements, shooting sports and wildlife. And weather sealing is ever so important. And the 300mm, well, it doesn't disappoint, as this thing is seriously sealed, 17 seals in all, to prevent the ingress of dust and water. It's designed to work in temperatures as low as 14 degrees Fahrenheit. And oh, lastly, like the 40-150, the 300 has this really cool lens hood attached that stays attached and can expand and contract without ever having to leave the lens. It's a really nice innovation, and it's really well implemented. In the end, the 300mm f4 is an exemplary combination of material refinement, and weather sealing. And build just doesn't get any better than this. I mean, even the air hockey puck lens cap is included with this one as well. In fact, every time I think Olympus has hit the pinnacle of build quality with their lenses, they somehow manage to raise the bar even higher for build quality. And as such, the 300mm f4 Pro is easily a 10 out of 10 for build quality. So next up is autofocus speed and accuracy. Outfitted with Olympus's high-speed imager autofocus system, the lens is designed to capture fast-moving subject matter at great distances. And interestingly, on the flip side, the minimum focus distance is just 4.6 feet away, which is amazing for a 600mm equivalent lens focusing in that close of a distance. That actually gives this thing some value as a macro lens. It really does. But is the AF fast and is it accurate? Well, I'm going to demo the lens here really quick. We actually set it to infinity, and we're going to focus on something really close. So here goes. You ready? I'm going to hold the button now. And now. There you go. And then up here. That's pretty fast. But truthfully, it's not as blazingly fast as many of the other Olympus lenses that I've used and tested. And this one actually tends to hunt just a little bit before it finds its intended target. That said, however, it is fast enough to capture accurate focus quickly enough in most situations. Now, limiting the focusing distance helps quite a bit as it reduces the distance the internal elements need to travel to obtain sharp focus. It's great if you're shooting subjects that are far away. Once it locks on, it's deadly accurate. So how's the tracking focus? Well, given that there will be a lot of bird and flight shooters and sport shooters who are likely to be interested in a lens like this, just keep in mind that at 600mm equivalent field of view, that's a really small space in which to keep and track your subject, especially when you're hand-holding a lens like this. So depending on how close your subject is, you may have a hard time keeping that bird in flight, again, inside of that tiny frame when you're shooting. What we did, we took it out to photograph some soccer players in action, and by the way, that's football to all of my European and Australian viewers. And anyway, we also took it birding to see what we could get. And here are some tracking samples utilizing this lens attached to the Olympus EM1. Not bad, right? So all in, it's fast enough and certainly adequate for its intended purposes for the bulk of situations that you'd likely want to use it in. Just keep in mind, again, it will hunt just a little bit before it captures focus, but once it does capture focus, it's deadly accurate. So for AF speed and accuracy, the 300mm f4 from Olympus gets a 9 out of 10. Next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. And frankly, if you're going to spend $2,500 for a micro four thirds lens, then it better deliver the goods optically. This thing is fashioned into a rock solid and beautiful cylinder of metal and glass. And it certainly looks the part, but how are the optics? Well, I think they're amazing and unreal, with one caveat. For all the special lens elements and coatings inside this thing that are dedicated to reducing lens aberrations, I did notice the lens's performance against bright light was a little bit on the disappointing side. Fortunately, you're not often going to be finding yourself shooting directly into the sun or into a bright light source with one of these things, and that's a good thing, but it's something you need to keep in mind. Hand-holding the lens with its amazing 6 stops of image stabilization with an Olympus OMD EM1 camera. And speaking of which, this is actually the first time Olympus has actually included a lens with in-body image stabilization or in-lens image stabilization, which is great news for Panasonic shooters. So when you combine image stabilization with amazing optical quality, then you have a recipe for incredible images. But don't take my word for it. Let me just show you. The next 2 minutes or so will be a series of stills and video clips showcasing the optical quality of the amazing Olympus 300mm f4 Pro IS lens. And let there be no doubt, if you want to go on safari or shoot sports and you are a micro four thirds shooter, then image quality just doesn't get any better than this. So last up and arguably most important is value. And this is when you need to think long and hard before you plunk down the nearly $2,500 that it takes to get a hold of one of these. Now, I'm not saying the lens isn't worth it, far from it, but $2,500 does represent a new high for Micro Four Thirds camera lenses. Now on the upside, you have the absolute pinnacle of build quality. Fantastic optics, weather sealing in 17 different places, and up to 6 stops of image stabilization with a compatible Olympus OMD body like the EM1 or the EM5 Mark II. Not to mention the in-lens stabilization that's included, which is great news for Panasonic shooters who want to take advantage of a lens like this. Now, notably on the downside are the 3.5 pounds of weight, which flies in the face of the narrative of smaller and more compact camera systems like the OMD EM1. I mean, I get it, it's 600mm equivalent field of view in something that's this relatively small. I mean, that's still pretty amazing, but it's still heavy for a compact system camera lens. You also have autofocus, that's reasonably fast and accurate, but it's a little bit fussy to acquire focus and lock on right away. Now, this is something that we've seen before in other mirrorless lenses, but you do notice that this lens has a tendency to hunt just a little bit before it locks on. The same goes for tracking focus. Again, once it locks on, which is pretty fast, it does manage to hold on to the subject really well, at least with the OMD EM1. But all in, it's a very competent addition to Olympus's Pro line of lenses. If it can handle the high price point, then you're going to be rewarded with some amazing images. But clearly, this lens was not intended for the casual user. And as such, for value, the 300mm f4 Pro gets an 8.5 out of 10. So to wrap up this review, we gave the Olympus 300mm f4 IS Pro Series lens a 45.5 out of 50 and our highly recommended rating. The final word, if you're into safari, sports, or bird photography, or if you happen to work for, say, I don't know, National Geographic, and you're a Micro Four Thirds shooter with the budget, then the 300mm f4 IS Pro lens is a great or really great option that's much easier to handle than full-frame offerings from the likes of both Canon and Nikon. Now, to be clear, this is not to say that the 300mm from Olympus is either small or inexpensive. In fact, it's quite clearly neither. But what it is a relatively lightweight and good value lens that offers amazing professional quality results, especially if your photography entails shooting far away things. This would be great if, say, you were a parent that has a child that plays a sport, or if you're into going to the park and getting some really great bird photography, or if you happen to have an upcoming trip to go on safari, say in Kenya. This thing is literally like taking pictures with a high-powered telescope attached to your camera. It's just stunning. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Bonita Springs, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.